The news that reality TV is frequently faked shouldn't come as a surprise. But given that Bear Grylls is an outdoor expert who survived a massive fall while in the British Special Forces, climbed Mount Everest before he was 25, and traversed the North Atlantic in an inflatable raft, he gets the benefit of the doubt. But evidence suggests Grylls may not be as rugged a survivalist as he seems. In fact, some of his wilderness tips have even been called into question by other experts. So what gives? Well, today we're unpacking all the evidence that proves Bear Grylls fakes his survivalist shows. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel. After that, leave a comment and let us know what other reality TV mayhem you would like to hear about. Now, let's see what conflict is more intense, man versus wild or man versus reality. So, is Bear Grylls a fake, or are all his Man vs. Wild episodes true? Well, the answer is strangely complicated. The premise of Grylls' show is that he's in a dangerous situation where he must rescue himself from being stranded or lost in the wilderness. To do so, he supposedly constructs equipment from scavenged objects, sleeps outside, drinks urine, and eats bugs. Not necessarily in that order. On Man vs. Wild, or Born Survivor, as it's known in the UK, Grylls is shown taking extreme treks through the wilderness and sleeping outside. But in 2008, the truth came out. Grylls often stays in hotels instead of roughing it. The star apologized for misleading viewers, telling the BBC, "The truth is much less exciting. We filmed these things over 6 days and, after filming the night stuff, we're back with the crew in a base camp lodge." Grylls went on to explain that the base camp could be a tented camp in the Sahara or in Sumatra, ponchoed up in the jungle, and that some of the hotels he stays in had 4 walls but not a roof, or a roof with no walls. But he stresses that he and the crew do go out and film the night sequences, so they are definitely outdoors, sometimes. For just about any other show, this would be completely understandable, if perhaps a union violation. However, for fans of Grylls, it feels disappointing, if not outright misleading. After all, the whole premise of the show is that he's going to be roughing it in some of the most dangerous places on Earth. It's literally titled Man vs. Wild. Learning that Grylls is sleeping in hotels and luxury tents sounds a bit more like man versus inconvenience. In one episode of Man vs. Wild, Grylls is supposedly stranded on a deserted island. He's shown building a traditional Polynesian raft out of natural materials like bamboo and palm leaves. The footage makes it seem as though he is actually constructing the craft. But in reality, survival consultant Mark Weinert and the show's crew put the raft together, then disassembled it so Grylls could make it on camera. Sort of like IKEA furniture. What's more, Grylls was actually in Hawaii, an island that is not really deserted. As Weinert put it, viewers are being naive if they really believe everything happens the way it is shown on TV. Well, sure, but we're not talking about an episode of Knight Rider here. Grylls does some pretty extreme things in the name of survival, from eating bugs to swimming in frozen lakes. These may look like spur-of-the-moment decisions he uses to illustrate potential survival scenarios, but they're actually planned out well in advance. Grylls even has a stunt tester, Megan Hine, who tries out the death-defying acts before he shoots them for TV, sort of like a poison tester for Evel Knievel. While this may be disappointing to audiences, it's an unavoidable reality of producing a television show. If Grylls were to get hurt or sick doing survival stuff on episode 1, production would have to shut down, putting a lot of people out of work and potentially costing the show millions of dollars. It's the same reason actors use stunt people. Kind of sounds like Grylls might be an actor. Fudging these kinds of details for safety reasons doesn't only extend to Grylls. On his show, The Island with Bear Grylls, a group of people were stranded on an island to see who could survive in the wilderness with nothing but their knowledge and gumption. And part of that survival meant finding food and clean water. However, Grylls and his crew placed fresh water into rubber-lined pools to ensure the contestants would be able to find it. That arguably defeats the show's entire premise, but they also couldn't risk any of the contestants dying of dehydration, not even if it makes good TV. In a Reddit AMA, survivalist Les Stroud discussed how Grylls' survival skills seem questionable, claiming that many of the actual survival skills taught are bogus. Others are pure TV stunt entertainment and do not relate to the world of survival. Stroud went on to suggest that the show pulls outdated and incorrect information from other sources or invents survival scenarios out of whole cloth, rather than relying on any of Grylls' purported expertise. Stroud continued his Bear Grylls flame war, saying that the show's advice could result in worsening the situation. My professional opinion on the subject of survival is that he is not an instructor I would ever suggest to be followed. In one episode of the show, Grylls scales a railway bridge with no safety equipment, walks through a dark train tunnel, and jumps onto a moving locomotive to reach safety. In other words, he takes a lot of risks for no apparent reward, other than looking totally awesome, of course, which is pretty important for a TV show, but less so in a genuine wilderness situation. Grylls is essentially the Tom Cruise of survivalist culture. He's making good entertainment, but no one should attempt anything he does. Speaking of not trying this at home, Grylls has become somewhat notorious for drinking his own urine. There's even a meme about it, and that's a shame. He's also not picky about the source. On his program, Running Wild with Bear Grylls, he prepared stewed mouse by cooking it in urine, donated by his guest, actress Michelle Rodriguez. Though some survivors of extraordinary disasters have resorted to drinking their own waste, the practice is discouraged. Urine contains bacteria and toxins that can be harmful, and drinking it is similar to drinking seawater, meaning it will not hydrate you. And like seawater, you should only drink it as a last resort, definitely not in a mouse stew. The Island with Bear Grylls sees contestants supposedly dropped onto a remote island where they must survive without any resources or modern amenities, and potentially coming into contact with wild animals. To ensure this happened, producers allegedly set caimans loose to create dramatic wildlife encounters. Hope they all got their SAG card. But perhaps the biggest deception was the identities of the contestants themselves. Viewers were told the men didn't have any outdoor survival experience, but a few of them were TV professionals, and some had even worked with Grylls before. One had even previously spent time in extreme environments and war zones. Hope they all got their SAG card? On another episode of Man vs. Wild, Grylls was shown coming face to face with wild horses. The encounter with the creatures was filmed in the Sierra Nevada mountains, or as he put it, one of the few places in the U.S. where horses still roam wild, like the ones the Rolling Stones sang about. The thing is, the horses were not so wild. They were apparently tame and had been trucked in specifically for filming. And Grylls doesn't give the best advice in the event of a real animal encounter, or one that seemed real anyway. When he came across a bear while filming Man vs. Wild, he recommended that people stranded in the woods run away from the predator. Odds are a good number of you just said, "Oh, don't do that." Bears will chase anything running away from them, which is a fairly well-known fact about bears. The best tactic is to move slowly, walking to the left or right of the bear in a deliberate manner, while keeping it in sight, kind of like a crab. Under no circumstances should anyone turn around and beat feet to the nearest tree, not even Bear Grylls. Otherwise, that bear'll grill ya. So what do you think? Is Bear Grylls a real survivalist or just an entertainer? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.